Have you ever been faced with a hard decision and you get stuck in an I don't know loop where you're just unsure if you're making the right decision, about to make another mistake, or if you should just stop everything altogether? What if you could ask yourself one question to help you find clarity in those moments? Welcome back. This is your host, Ambar Paloma, and you're listening to The Lighthouse Within. This podcast is all about helping you face change with more joy and more peace, both the changes you choose and the changes you don't choose. Today, we're continuing our Sense of Self series, which is all about building a stronger sense of identity that will help you move through changes feeling more unshakable. This is especially important for any of my folks out there who might be in a winter or a spring season of the change cycle. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry. I have a whole episode breaking it down, and I will link that in the show notes for you. But when you're going through one of those seasons or a difficult season, your focus can shift entirely to just surviving the day. And that can really tear down your confidence and leave you feeling disconnected from who you are. That makes it really difficult for you to make decisions or even to decide what your next step should be. So, in part two, I want to help you start reconnecting with a part of yourself that will make you feel more rooted in who you are and will help you make decisions with more clarity. I'm talking about your values and your priorities. So, in today's episode, you will also be getting how to rediscover your values and the one question you need to ask yourself to figure out if a decision is in alignment with who you want to be or if it's pulling you away from that version of yourself. So, without further ado, let's get into it. If these topics resonate with you and you're really excited about the idea of rebuilding your sense of self, rebuilding your identity, I'm actually considering hosting workshops or maybe creating a PDF that will guide you through exercises to build a stronger sense of identity during life's hardest seasons. But I'd really love to know which one would be more helpful to you. Would you prefer a workshop where we're in a small group and you get access to my guidance in the moment? Or would you prefer some kind of PDF where you do it on your own time and you go at your own pace? Let me know. I'm actually going to include a poll in the show notes. So if that interests you, please go ahead and check out that poll. So, what inspired this episode? I kind of want to share a little bit about myself, as I do on the show. I actually used to really struggle with making decisions from a place of clarity, and I would often outsource this validation to other people. So, it's really common for me to be in a situation, and maybe I made a decision, maybe I was unsure about it, and I'd have to run it by like 10 other people and be like, did I do the right thing? Do you think that this is the right thing? What would you have done? And I just had a lot of self-doubt. I felt like I didn't know if what I was doing was the right thing or the good thing or whatever. And I just felt so much anxiety around decision making. When I started to get more clear on who I was and who I wanted to become in this next phase of my life, I noticed myself having way more self-trust and feeling less anxious about my future, which is 100% what I want for you as you move through your seasons of change. Your sense of identity is so important to making it through a season of change and also to rebuilding your next chapter. So again, those winter and those spring seasons. So my first question to you is, when was the last time you actually paused to ask yourself what matters to you most right now? Not what used to matter to you, not what your parents wanted for you, not what Instagram influencers say should matter for you, what you, the version of you today, truly cares about. There's something really special about being in a season of change, and it doesn't always feel like that when it happens. But whether you are in fall, winter, or spring, so fall would be like the event just happened, or your choice to make a major change just happened, or you're in winter and you're pulling away, you're kind of going into hibernation mode, and you're trying to figure out what's supposed to come next, you're going through grief, or you're finally getting out into spring and you're starting to rebuild. There's always this big question that's going to come up for you between fall and winter. And unless you answer that question, you are going to keep repeating the mistake or the pattern that caused the shift in the first place. And that question is this: What really matters to you most? Which can sound like a very scary question to be faced with, but this is actually an opportunity that life is giving you to pull your life into alignment. And if you're operating from the wrong playbook of values, or if you're operating from an outdated book of values, it's going to be very hard for you to answer that question. It is the quickest way for you to end up burned out in jobs you don't like, stuck in relationships that don't align, or agreeing to things that make you resentful. Think of it like this: your values are like a compass, or in a more modern adaptation, like a set of Google Maps instructions. But the instructions will only get you where you're going if you check it every so often. Otherwise, you might be walking confidently in the wrong direction. I don't know if I shared this with you. I'm actually obsessed with traveling, although I cannot travel right now for reasons that I shared in my last episode. But travel is really one of the loves of my life. And one of the things I love to do most when I'm traveling is getting just a little bit lost. I will obviously put in my destination of the site that I want to go see into my Google Maps. But as I'm walking to that destination, listen, if I see a cute little shop selling handmade earrings, if I see a random little side street that looks like it's perfect for my next photo session, or I see a beautiful building, you better believe I'm about to go take a detour. Sometimes those detours lead to hidden gems that make the trip extra special. But the beauty of having something like Google Maps is that it doesn't matter where you end up. It doesn't matter what detour you end up taking along the way. Your Google Maps will always reroute you from where you got lost back to where you were going the whole time. And that's exactly what your values can do for you. When you get off track, when you take those detours, your values will always make sure that you get back on track and where you're supposed to go. One thing that made a really huge impact on my sense of self over the past year was that I started to realize that my values weren't just a part of how I see the world. I started to realize how my values were meant to guide me to where I was meant to be. I realized that they all combined to make me a perfect fit for the opportunities and impact that were right for me. For example, I valued inclusion and connection over dominance, wisdom over pride, and service to others over status. And I realized that these sets of values are what make me the person family and friends love to come to for advice, and the same values that would make me a good life coach. It made me treasure who I am and want to protect it, not change it. And that's what made me want to set better boundaries and people please less. It even made me want to choose friends and dating partners more wisely to honor these parts of myself that I was starting to treasure so much. Because if your values are a compass to get you where you are meant to be, that means that the rooms that make you compromise your values are not the rooms where you will shine. They're not the rooms where you will be your most aligned, most peaceful, most joyful self. And this is something that I have had to learn as I healed from people pleasing, is that not being chosen and not being liked is not a reason to contort yourself into someone else's playbook of values. It is a source of protection, keeping you from ending up in the wrong life. So how can we use this? How can we use our values to keep ourselves out of the wrong rooms? We aren't often conscious of when we are acting out of alignment. And sometimes this behavior could be because of a history of people pleasing, or being in environments that ask you to suppress or shrink who you were, or even playing by somebody else's values. So, I want to offer you a quick moment of reflection on what your values are in this season and how you can use this to make better decisions for yourself. And if you need some help, because there's a lot of values out there that you can have, there's a whole section in my free PDF, The Clarity Compass, on values, which includes a list that you can reference. And again, that is linked. It is always linked in the show notes for you. But I want you to look at something like that and go through these questions and make a list of at least 10 values that you feel like these are my core values, okay? 1. When was the last time you felt deeply proud of yourself? Like deeply proud of yourself? What did that moment reflect about what matters most to you? 2. Think about a time something made you angry, hurt, or frustrated. What was the value that was being violated in that moment? And 3. What do you envy or admire in others? Envy can actually be a very useful emotion in moments like this because it can point to a desire that's rooted in a value. For example, if you admire someone's sense of freedom, it may be that autonomy is one of your core values. Your identity shapes your habits. We've talked about this a lot of times in previous episodes where we talked about how this is the deepest layer of your identity. So when we're making a change, when we want to change our habits, when we want to change our outcomes, the deepest layer that we need to address is always going to be our identity. That's where our perspectives are, our worldview, our values. So it's really important to be in tune with this part of yourself. When you become aware that you value things like honesty, connection, or responsibility, your mind automatically starts to filter your behavior through that lens. And you will start making decisions that feel better in your body because they will be in alignment with your core identity. So you will start honoring your inner compass without needing 10 people to co-sign your decisions. I am talking to myself there, or at least my old self. So once you've updated your list of values, I want to leave you with just one guiding question that will help you understand if you are moving towards more alignment and a stronger sense of self. And I think alignment is so important because something I've really been learning in my journey in several goals over the past year and a half is how much embodying the person who is capable of having what you want is important. And so if we say we value one thing and that value is important to achieving the outcome we want, but we're not actually honoring that value through our actions, we can start to feel anxious or uneasy or kind of have this feeling like, why do I just feel off? And it's because you are acting out of alignment with who you're supposed to be. So here's the one question that I want you to ask yourself. Does this bring me closer to someone I'm proud of, or is it costing me a piece of who I am? Another way to ask yourself that question is, does this decision, does this situation bring me closer to my values, or is it asking me to abandon them? Let's move through a few situations where you might ask yourself that, because I always think examples are helpful to just see how that works in actions, right? So you can always use this to assess whether a situation is inviting more of what you value or pulling you away from it. For example, asking yourself something like, is this friendship helping me be more honest? Or do I find myself lying just to maintain the connection? Is this job bringing me more stability? Or am I constantly on edge and exhausted? Is this relationship helping me grow in communication and emotional maturity? Or am I lashing out just to be heard? So asking these kind of questions, judging, does this help me grow in my values or does this make me abandon my values, will take you very far. And it doesn't always mean that you need to get rid of the situation, but it does mean that there's something off about the situation that is not going to be fulfilling you, and that means that something needs to change. So let your values be a filter, let it be your anchor, and let it be your daily gut check. One of the ways to know when you're out of alignment, and I kind of touched on this a little while ago, is you'll kind of feel like everything seems like it's fine on paper, but deep down, something just feels off. That's because acting out of alignment with your values is a subtle form of self-abandonment. And that can leave you feeling totally off, anxious, unsettled, and even disconnected from yourself. Here are some common examples that you might relate to or can help spark some reflection in the ways that you say you value something, but your actions may be saying something else. For example, saying something like, I value rest and self-care, but you're constantly overcommitting, saying yes to everyone, and feeling guilty for taking some time off. Or one I certainly used to be guilty of. When someone else wasn't being mindful of my time, I would still agree to what they were asking for, but then I would secretly feel resentful of them. Another example would be saying something like, I value honesty, but then giving into people pleasing, avoiding hard conversations, or telling half-truths just to keep the peace. So you're really not honoring that value of honesty. And I know that this particular thing can be a little bit tricky, and we are going to have a conversation on boundaries because they are so important to protecting and honoring your sense of self. This last one, though, actually kind of cracks me up because I have been so guilty of this and not even realizing that I'm doing it. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you've like reached out to your friends and you're like, oh my God, how do I turn this down? Like, how do I turn down this guy I don't want to go on a date with? How do I turn down this person at, I don't know, church or work or whatever? You're like, I don't want to be rude. And suddenly you're all working together, like you're on some like group project to find the best way to say something so that you can get out of what you don't want to do. And it reminds me of a few years ago, I had a friend who was in, that kind of a situation. I don't remember if it was like a work thing or what it was, but she opens up to her dad about it, right? And she was just like, oh my God, dad, what do I do? And her dad gives her the most dad response ever because he just looks at her and says, what about the truth? So, yes, folks, next time you're in a what do I say situations, take a page from my friend's dad's playbook. What about the truth? But again, when we talk about our boundaries conversation, I'll give you a few formulas that you can use and always have in your back pocket to honor your value of honesty while also just like in general honoring your limits, your boundaries, and maintaining and preserving relationships, right? Because I think that that's where the fear comes from. It's like, I want to be honest, but I'm afraid of hurting a relationship, right? Let me give you an example of how this kind of played out for me recently. I actually had a friend who I hadn't seen in over a year come to town with like a 2-day notice, like max, possibly less. I don't even remember. Suddenly she was just like, hey, I'm in town. But I had already had plans with another friend who lived in town. Friend A asked me to cancel on friend B to spend time with her since we hadn't seen each other in so long. But I really value keeping my word. And if I can't keep my word, it better be for a good reason. Which I didn't think that this was. So in the past, I might have felt resentful that they kept insisting that I do this, or I might have even felt guilty and felt like I needed to make it work because I didn't want to disappoint them. But here's how I use the truth and my values to just say no. I said, hey, I really value keeping my word, so I won't cancel on my friend. I'm happy to see you after this time. And that was that. And I didn't feel bad about it because I was like, it would be really crazy for me to be like, hey, I can't hang out with you because I value keeping my word. And for you to be like, no, you shouldn't value keeping your word. Hang out with me instead. So, of course, she understood and she honored my no. So, if you've gotten to the end of this episode and you're like, I'm still feeling unsure about all of this, that's okay too. Sometimes being in a season of a lot of change can leave us feeling really unsteady. And if you've been in the season for a long while, it can really start to chip away at your confidence and disconnect you from the things that once lit you up. This is especially common if you've been in a winter season for a while or if you're just starting to step out into your spring season. I'll be touching more on that in a future episode, but honestly, this is exactly the kind of thing I'd explore more deeply in a sense of self workshop or ebook. So if that sounds helpful to you, I'd really love your feedback. Please let me know which one you'd prefer by checking the poll in the show notes or shoot me a quick message. Let me know whether you would prefer those workshops or an ebook. Your input will be really helpful in creating something that will actually help you move through your season of change. Before we sign off, as you know, I would love to leave you with a final message. If you're somewhere quiet and safe, I invite you to place your hand over your heart, gently close your eyes, and take a nice deep breath with me. Let the air fill your lungs and flow like light throughout your body, gently pushing out any heaviness you've been carrying this week. And exhale. Now, with your eyes still closed, please receive this message. Dear friend, you are not meant to be me. You are not meant to be her, him, or them. You are meant to be radically you, rooted in yourself, planted in the values that flow through you like a life pulse, values that guide your steps, light your path, and lead you toward the life that will bring you peace, joy, and fulfillment. Never fear disappointing others when you're standing on what is good and what is true. And know this, What is good and what is true will always lead you back home to where you belong. Now take one more deep breath with me. Inhale, hold it, and exhale. You can open your eyes now. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I hope you're feeling more rooted in your sense of self. Please tune in next time as we explore how to improve your intuition and your self-trust through moments of change. I'm having so much fun sharing this series, and I hope that you are loving it too. And in the meantime, I am wishing you a fantastic week. Bye.